Sometimes it feels like the constant noise in the world leaves very little room for quiet moments. This is 10 Better Minutes, a podcast sharing a few real stories from recent days that offer a steadier view of things without ignoring the hard parts. I am Ian Rhodes, your host, and I appreciate you taking a little time to listen today. In a few minutes, we will hear about a rescue effort bringing relief after days of uncertainty and a creative approach to making public spaces safer for everyone. But first, I want to start with a story about a woman whose unexpected luck helped more than just herself. Honorata Jamrozic is a 48-year-old foster care mother from Dartford in Kent. 2 weeks before her life took a bright turn, she had just returned from her father's funeral in Poland, and she was worried she might have to step away from fostering. Her parents were elderly, and the timing felt tight. Then, right after she won a £1 million prize in the UK Omaze monthly millionaire draw, something simple and joyful happened. The prize is described as tax-free, and Honorata said she learned of the fortune through a 15-month subscription of 20. Instead of keeping the win as a private celebration, she looked across the street, or maybe right around the corner, and chose community. She surprised her neighbors of 14 years with £5,000 to fund their first family vacation abroad. Honorata framed it as a way to give them a memory they had never had the chance to make before, and she was thoughtful about what the generosity would mean for her, too. She said the influx of funds would help her return to fostering and make life easier for the people she loves. And there is a future in that, not only in the vacation plans, but in her own. She is hoping to travel in October for her 20th wedding anniversary and bring her mother along. It is a reminder that sometimes the happiest kind of good news is the kind that reaches more than one home. When people feel unsafe at work, they often stay quiet, even when they have every reason to speak up. Today, let us look at a simple system that helped a restaurant turn silence into swift support. Chef Erin Wade at Homeroom in Oakland worked with women on her team, and she listened closely to what employees had experienced in earlier jobs. She realized that training alone was not going to create lasting change, because too many people were still weighing the risk of reporting against the reality of having to face a customer again. So she and the staffers built a 3-step response system that used color cues and a short reporting phrase. Yellow was for creepy vibes or an unsavory look, and the response could be as small as switching tables. Orange meant a sexual undertone comment, and staff reported it by saying, "I have an orange at table 3," which brought a manager or a server in to take over. Red was for explicit comments, touching or repeated orange incidents after being told to stop, and red triggered the strongest action, including ejecting the customer. The most hopeful part is that they have not seen the last time someone reported red in a long time, since the system rolled out over 10 years ago, and it did not stay only at Homeroom. Other restaurants adopted the framework, and the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission later consulted Wade and adopted it as a national best practice. For a workplace culture, that kind of clarity can feel like breathing easier together. It is one of those moments that reminds you how care can travel farther than you expect, from a quiet park to an emergency room and back again. Olive Cook Taylor was 5. Playing on a roundabout at a park in Hockley, England, when an accident left her injured hand needing urgent help. An ambulance rushed her to Southend Hospital for emergency treatment, but surgeons could only do the next step if they had the specific fingertip parts they needed quickly. When the ambulance left, firefighters did not. They stayed at the playground and searched carefully, scanning the area and finding what mattered, even as time pressed forward. Once they had the parts, they placed them on ice and drove them to the hospital under emergency lights, pushing through every minute to support the surgeon's work. Olive was later transferred to Broomfield Hospital in Chelmsford, where the reattachment surgery became possible. In the end, healing has its own pace, and 8 weeks later, Olive came to Rayleigh Weir Fire Station. She met the Red Watch crew and showed them her recovery, along with the paintings she made as a thank you. Chief Fire Officer Rick Hilton signed a certificate of bravery, not just for a child's courage, but for a whole chain of determined people who chose to keep looking until help could become action. That is the hopeful takeaway, that trust in people can be as practical as ice in a cooler and as lasting as a child returning to say, "I am getting better because you showed up." When 2 earthquakes struck northern Venezuela, hope felt like a shrinking space for people trapped under rubble. And then, in the middle of uncertainty, rescuers from Virginia answered with careful hands and steady timing. 2 quakes, measuring 7.2 and 7.5, shook the region along the northern coast, including La Guaira State. From Fairfax County, Virginia Task Force 1 deployed with 80 first responders and more than 70,000 pounds of specialized rescue and medical equipment, working alongside local emergency crews as days passed and searches continued. The reality was clear. After 4 days, many people had been waiting so long that hope was fading into routine checks and quiet listening for any sign of life. But in La Guaira State, a father and his young son were found and pulled out alive after being trapped underground for those 4 days. In another rescue over the same weekend, a mother and her 9-month-old baby were brought to safety, escaping serious physical injuries. It is easy to think of rescue as one moment, but this story reminds us it is really a process that keeps going when there is no guarantee. A few minutes of extra listening, a few careful decisions made with teamwork, can turn maybe into "they are here." And for the families who were waiting, that difference is everything. For everyone watching from afar, it is a small, practical kind of hope that refuses to be silent. Sometimes the quietest places ask to be noticed. This story follows one man in Norfolk, England, who turns a random grave into a careful, personal remembrance. Simon Howard scrolls through the world in small details, then steps into a cemetery to find a headstone he does not recognize. In one visit, he chooses the grave of George and Reginald Bailey, both laid to rest by time, both dated in the patient language of stone. George Samuel Bailey was born in King's Lynn in 1904, and he died on May 12, 1934. Reginald Bailey was born in 1911. Simon looks up what he can, tracing names and dates back toward the people those names came from. He shares that George joined the Royal Navy on July 6, 1922, and that records later point to a return home after illness, a note that reminds him these were living moments, not just entries. Then Simon does the work you can see. He clears the overgrown area around the headstone, tidies the place where time has folded weeds into the edges, and he sets 2 small white flowers into holders right on the tombstone. He posts a message to remember them, and the message does not ask for grand words. It simply holds space for George and Reginald Bailey, and for anyone who might pass by and feel, for a moment, that they are not entirely alone in history. As always, I have a wonderful tip for you to help with your mental reset and to make room for more joy in the world. Today, we are zooming out a little. The tip is this: look at the long arc instead of the loud moment. Because some moments feel like they are the whole story. A tough conversation, a slow day, a sudden rejection. Your mind grabs that one bright, sharp flash and tries to turn it into a prediction. But most of life does not move in single frames. It moves in patterns. It moves in seasons. So, when you feel yourself stuck in the loud moment, pause and ask a calmer question. What does this look like in the bigger picture? Not, what will magically fix itself right now? But, where does this fit in the arc of my life and my work? Try this simple practice. For 1 minute, name what is true in this moment and then name what else is true across time. You have recovered before. You have adapted before. You have learned, even when it was uncomfortable. Then soften your next step. Choose the next small, honest action that supports the direction you actually want. The loud moment can be real, but it does not get to be the author. We made it to the end of this episode of 10 Better Minutes, and I just want to say thank you for spending a few minutes with me today. If all the headlines have you worn down, I hope this brought you back to something steady and real. People still show up for each other, communities still take care of their own, and kindness keeps finding quiet ways to move through the world. If you have a good news story you think others might have missed, share a link or a brief local positive moment in the comments. I read those and I really appreciate them. This is Ian Rhodes with 10 Better Minutes. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow.